Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. This is my own take on these characters and what might happen next in their journey. You know what's beautiful about love? It's that moment when pride falls away and all that's left is the truth. The truth that family matters more than being right. Let me take you back to where we are. James has built a simple life with Diep and little Nye. Every morning, he cooks breakfast for his family. Stir-fried noodles, cut up eggs. Small moments that feel like everything. But there's a shadow over this happiness. His father, Mr. Juan, has never accepted Diep. Never accepted their marriage. The distance between them has been cold and long. What I love about James in this story is his quiet strength. He doesn't fight his father with anger. He doesn't demand acceptance. He just lives his life with dignity, cooking breakfast for his daughter, loving his wife. That's real courage. Not the loud kind, the steady kind. Then one day, Mr. Juan comes to visit. James is outside preparing vegetables when he sees his father approaching. There's tension in the air. Years of it. But James doesn't turn away. He invites his father to sit down, offers him water. The conversation starts carefully, like two people walking on ice. "How are you doing?" Mr. Juan asks. James tells him about the consulting work he's been doing. Opening companies, making it work. Everything's going well. Then Mr. Juan's face changes. "How about you, Dad?" James asks. "Is the company still running well?" And that's when the wall breaks. Mr. Juan's voice gets heavy. Generally speaking, it's not going well. The company is in serious trouble. Since James and Hung left, nobody could manage it properly. Losses piling up. Both the wood company and the paint company struggling. "How difficult is the situation now?" James asks. Mr. Juan looks at his son. "Maybe I'll have to close the company soon." James sits up straighter. Close the company? The company his father built from nothing? Why? I saw everything developing very well. But Mr. Juan explains. After James left, he hired people to replace him. But nobody could do the job. The losses kept growing. "Are you in debt?" James asks. The answer cuts through the afternoon air. Currently, Dad owes about $5 billion. $5 billion. James goes quiet. That's not a small problem. That's everything falling apart. How can there be such a large deficit? Mr. Juan explains he's covered all the losses himself. Asked people for help. Nobody helped. He's paid the employees extra just to keep them. But he's still short $5 billion. But here's what nobody saw coming. James doesn't get angry. He doesn't say, "I told you so." He asks a different question. "Dad, do you have a plan?" Mr. Juan tells him. He'll sell both houses to pay the debt. But James knows the math doesn't work. Those houses are worth maybe $2.5 billion. When people know you're desperate, they'll bargain you down. It'll probably only get $2 billion. "What about the $3 billion?" James asks quietly. That's when the full story comes out. Mr. Juan had money. The money James left from his company. He invested half of it in minerals. But it's all gone now. "How did you end up in this situation?" James asks. "I was cheated," Mr. Juan admits. Two partners took a large amount, only put down a small deposit. When Mr. Juan started producing, they stopped buying. He sold the products cheaply. The partners disappeared. Haven't contacted him since. "I'm partly to blame too," Mr. Juan says, and his voice breaks a little. "I left the company. This happened." James sees his father. Really sees him. This proud man, admitting failure. Admitting he made mistakes. "Dad, calm down," James says. "Don't rush to sell those two houses. Let's find a solution together." But Mr. Juan shakes his head. "No need, I can handle it myself." Then comes the moment that changes everything. "I'm sorry, son," Mr. Juan says. "I've put a lot of pressure on you lately." And James, this son who was rejected, who was told his marriage wasn't good enough, who left the company to build his own life, he says something that breaks my heart in the best way. "I don't blame you." But that's just the beginning of what's about to unfold. Last, we left off with James telling his father those 3 words. "I don't blame you." Let me tell you something. That's not just forgiveness. That's love. The kind that survives everything. James continues, and his voice is steady. "If I were in your shoes, I would feel the same way. People think differently in different eras. You were born in an old era, living with an old culture. I don't blame myself." He's not just forgiving his father. He's understanding him, seeing him as a whole person. Someone shaped by his time, by his beliefs. Right or wrong, those beliefs made him who he is. Then James says something that makes Mr. Juan look up. "As for the 5 billion debt, I will help you a little." Mr. Juan starts to protest, but James holds up his hand. "I know you're under a lot of pressure. No matter what, he's still my father. I can't abandon my father." There it is. That's simple truth. Blood is blood. Family is family, even when it's hard, even when you've been hurt. Here's what touches me about this moment. James isn't rich. He's doing consulting work, cooking his own breakfast, living simply with Diep and Nye. But he doesn't hesitate. "I will try to manage," he tells his father. "At least for now, I can get about 1.2 billion, and I'll let you know how it goes in the future." 1.2 billion. It's not 5 billion, but it's what he has. It's everything he can give. "Don't put too much pressure on yourself," James adds. "Life has its ups and downs. The important thing is to stand firm." Can you imagine? This son comforting his father, teaching his father about resilience, about standing firm. The student becoming the teacher. The rejected son becoming the rock. Mr. Juan's voice gets soft. "Thank you for not blaming me." And James says it again, stronger this time. "I don't need your help. How could I abandon my father? I will definitely support my father. Definitely. Not maybe. Not if things work out. Definitely. That's a promise. That's a son claiming his father, even when his father didn't claim him. You know what that means? It means James is choosing love over hurt. He's choosing family over pride. He's showing his father what real strength looks like. Not the strength to reject, the strength to embrace. But then something shifts in the air. James asks a question. "Have you talked to Hung yet, Dad?" Mr. Juan shakes his head. He hasn't. The conversation pauses, and then James notices something in his father's face. A hesitation. Something unspoken. "Where's Diep?" Mr. Juan asks. "She went to work," James answers. The question hangs there. "What do you want to see Diep for, Dad?" James asks. And then it comes. The words Mr. Juan has been carrying inside. "I want to apologize to Diep." The room goes still. Apologize. To Diep. The woman he never accepted. The daughter-in-law he rejected. The mother of his grandchild that he turned his back on. Mr. Juan wants to apologize. And then something beautiful happened. James doesn't cry. He doesn't make a big speech. He just nods. "She went to work. Maybe another time." Simple words. But underneath them, there's an ocean of feeling. His father wants to apologize. That means his father is changing. That means the wall between them, the wall between Mr. Juan and Diep, might finally be coming down. Mr. Juan stands up. "I have to go home now." But James doesn't let him leave like that. "Dad, please stay here. I'll cook and you can eat with me." An invitation, a simple meal. The same stir-fried noodles he makes for Diep and Nye. He's inviting his father into his life, into his home, into his family. Now here's where the story takes its next turn. Mr. Hoan looks at his son, at this simple house, at the vegetables James was preparing, at the life James has built without his approval, without his money, without his blessing. Maybe another time, Mr. Hoan says softly. He's not ready yet, not quite ready to step fully into this new relationship. But the fact that he's considering it, that's movement, that's progress. Be careful on your way home, James says. After his father leaves, James stands there. The afternoon is quiet. The vegetables are still waiting to be prepared. His mind is full. Why did things turn out like this? He wonders aloud. His father facing bankruptcy, wanting to apologize to Diep, coming to him for help. Life has a way of bringing people back together. Sometimes it takes a crisis. Sometimes it takes everything falling apart to see what really matters. That evening, when Diep comes home from work, James is waiting. Nye is playing nearby. The house smells like dinner cooking. Diep can see something in her husband's face. Is the company and everything okay? She asks, thinking about his consulting work. James takes her hand. Overall, things aren't very good, he says, but he's not talking about his work. He tells her everything. His father's visit, the 5 billion debt, the company collapsing, the houses that need to be sold. Diep listens, her face serious. This is the man who rejected her, who made her husband choose between his family and his love, who never acknowledged their marriage. What did you tell him? She asks quietly. James looks at his wife. This woman who has stood by him through everything. I told him I would help. I told him I can't abandon my father. And here's what Diep does. She doesn't get angry. She doesn't say, after everything he did to us. She takes both of James's hands in hers. Of course you will help him, she says. He's your father. Family is family. See that? That's grace. That's the kind of love that heals wounds. Diep understands something important. Helping Mr. Hoan isn't just about money. It's about showing him what real family looks like. It's about living the values they've been teaching little Nye. That family matters. That we don't abandon people when they fall. But then James tells her the other part. He wants to apologize to you. Diep goes very still. He said that? James nods. He asked where you were. He said he wants to apologize. Tears come to Diep's eyes. Not sad tears. Something else. Hope, maybe, or relief. That the long Cold War might finally be ending. This is the part that gives me hope about this whole story. Because it shows us that people can change. That pride can give way to wisdom. That sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to understand what really matters. Mr. Hoan is losing his company, his houses, his empire. But in losing all of that, he might finally gain something more valuable. His family, his son, his daughter-in-law, his grandchild. That night, James and Diep sit together after Nye is asleep. They talk about how to help, where the 1.2 billion will come from, what it means for their own plans. But mostly, they talk about hope. Hope that this crisis will bring healing, that Mr. Hoan's apology will come, that one day soon they'll sit around a table together. James, Diep, Nye, and Mr. Hoan. A family, complete at last. The wall finally down. The love finally flowing both ways. But the most beautiful moment is still ahead. Because an apology that's been years in the making, when it finally comes, it changes everything. And what happens when a grandfather looks his grandson's mother in the eyes and says, "I'm sorry"? That's a moment that could heal all the broken pieces and make this family whole again.